when should you say no to a gig?
Yeah.
Which one?
Should you refuse a gig?
Not refuse, just say no.
I'll refuse a gig.
Okay. But we can introduce it as when should you say no to a gig and then go deeper into it. And you could talk about how you would prefer to refuse rather than just say no.
I mean, I'd say no. I'd rather not do it. And we're back.
Welcome back to Beyond the Signs podcast.
I'm your co-host, Omar Hamouda.
And I'm your fellow co-host, Kiera Lee.
In today's topic,
we're going to be talking about the power of saying no and / when should you say no to a gig.
Or how I like to say, when you should refuse a gig.
There we go. Let's get into it.
All right. Bet.
What do you think?
So honestly, for me, I think it comes down to like, 1, your circumstances, 2, your principle, and 3, if you feel like doing it or not.
Okay,
It's really
fair.
It's really that simple. But like I want to like dive really truly deeper, because like it really comes down to like, for example, like let's take it like this. How many times have you refused a gig? Based on what?
I mean, I can't like count the exact number, but I could tell you that I've done it on multiple occasions. And you know, there's obviously various reasons for why you would ever say no to a project. Usually, I would only say no to something if it drastically deters from the vision and the content that I strive and love to create as an artist. If it completely derails from what I do, you know what I mean? Like if someone came up to me and asked me to shoot tour of their home or something, or photos of their house. I mean, I could say yes to that, but do I specialize in that? Is that what I do? No. On a daily basis, no. So, you know, I would rather refer them to somebody or suggest somebody who I think could do what they're trying to get done, justice. So if I'm hit up for a gig that is something that I don't do, that's one reason I say no. Another reason I say no is if it's highly inconvenient for me. Depends on, first of all, how far I have to travel, how long the shoot. It depends on many factors. You know what I mean? Like, is it actually worth it for me? And I mean, I think that's kind of common sense here, but
right.
It also depends on how able you are to actually say no to something. If you're trying to just make ends meet and pay your rent, then, I feel like someone like that would say yes to everything.
Right.
But if you have the ability to be more selective and intentional with the projects that you take on, it's very important to know how to say no to certain projects.
Right. And I feel like for me, like when it comes down to like what projects I want to take on or should take on or need to take on, It really comes down to like one, for example, like we can break it down to different type of topics, because I can take like, I've done multiple different like categories of photography or filmmaking, right? From like real estate all the way down to music video to like the random like taking pictures of someone's dog, kid.
Right.
So I've done it all, right? But I realize what it comes down to is what my specialties are, which is mainly like video making, right? And coming up with a story. Like if it's more in the
filmmaking, aka
or like being cinematic and having a story to it. That's the sort of gigs I like to take on, right? But there are some of them that I have to refuse. And the reason why I say I have to refuse, because it goes down to like my core beliefs and principles, right?
Right.
I don't curse too much. I don't use profanic words, if that is even a term to use.
You don't use profanities.
Yeah, profanities, right? So like if I get like a music video and like I listen to it and it's about sex, drugs, and like whatever,
alcohol,
money,
whatever.
alcohol, whatever, I'm sorry, but it doesn't. I don't
It
do
doesn't
any of
align with
Yeah.
your core mission as an artist, as a creator.
Not even with my mission, but like me as a person.
As a person, yeah.
Because like at the end of the day, like who you are as a person is what your art is about, right?
Absolutely.
So I feel like that's where like I draw the line, right? And then when it comes to like, for example, like nowadays you have everyone trying to pose in like, you know, like in their birthday suit. Those are the kind of ones that I say no to, you know?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I don't want to be known as the nude photographer.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like those are, and often or not, like those are the ones that like you get hit up the most for.
Mm-hmm. Especially
like,
nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like with the mission of a female influencer, or, you know, a lot of female influencers, people who are on social media, or not just females, but, you know, like the fact that OnlyFans exists and people do shoots for that, and they hire photographers specifically for that. Like,
right. And I want to specify, it's not only female, but there are a lot of males who like,
that's what I just said. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. Like I've gotten hit up by guys who said, can you take, I'm like, absolutely not.
right.
I don't want to do that. But like,
I think that's fair. I mean, you know.
No, but like, if like I'm not gonna separate it between genders. If like I don't take those photos, I don't take it
of
whether
anybody,
you're a guy
whether,
or a girl.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and I obviously it comes down to your personal morals and where you personally draw the line on things that you're comfortable with / uncomfortable with. And I think we've talked about this in a different sense when we talked about group networking versus one-on-one. Where I was talking about the fact that, you know, when you're uncomfortable in a shoot, how can you make somebody else comfortable? How can you make the person that's in front of your camera feel comfortable if you yourself don't even feel comfortable?
Oh, absolutely.
And that's the biggest reason to say no to a gig or refuse a gig, is if it doesn't align with your core values as a person and also as a creator, then how are you going to feel comfortable during the shoot? And then in turn, you know, how is the product going to turn out? Because nobody's going to be comfortable.
Absolutely. And also the other reason why you should say no to a gig is if it's not paying you what your normal rates are, or if
we could dive into that real quick.
Exactly.
Because that's a whole nother factor.
Or if like the input into a project and the output are completely different. If you put way too much input, but the output is like minimal, whether it be like financially or like the experience or the exposure, because like there are certain cases where like exposures do matter more than like the actual like finance, but at the same time, like it has to equal one-on-one, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If not, the exposure has to be way more than the finance, you know?
And we touched on this in our episode about when to take unpaid gigs.
Right.
Because that bleeds into this topic of when to say no. Because if you have a project that's, it's a double whammy where it doesn't give you that exposure, and it also isn't offering, you know, the rate that aligns with you and you feel aligns with your worth, then what's the point?
No, absolutely.
How's that going to benefit you in any way? And then in turn, you're not going to put your best into the project. So that's not going to benefit the person who hired you or wanted you to do the job, you know? So all around, it's just not productive and effective, I feel.
Absolutely. And like also too, like another reason why to say no, I feel is like if you're dealing with someone who doesn't understand the value of one planning, or you or yourself, actually more than important, like the value of you. Mm-hmm. Like for example, like I'll never forget this one moment, and this is like an example. I remember walking out midway of the gig, and they were pissed off that I walked out, but I told them no. Absolutely not. You have no right of being pissed, right? So I was taking pictures of a furniture company, right? For products. And keep in mind, these furnitures were huge, bigger than this couch for sure, right? And I remember before getting on site, I asked of them, do you have people to move the actual couches and furniture? Because when I get there, I'm not going to be able to do it. He's like, yeah, we'll make sure that there's guys out there and stuff like that. I'm like, perfect. That's what we can do, right? Literally, I got onto site.
No one there.
No one on there except the owner's brother who is there as a manager to work for the day, right? I'll never forget this, right? So I was like, you know what? Let me just get the job done. So me and my assistant for the day, we just picked up the couch and we're sweating and all that stuff. And like, I don't want to get the nice furniture like sweat on and stuff like that. And like, there was one furniture I like we couldn't pick up because we need a third person. Mm-hmm. I remember asking the manager, right? Mm-hmm. And he looked at me and said, "That's not my job."
You're like, that's not my job either.
I literally said, "That's not your job." I'm like, all right. I walked in. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm done with my job. I'm done." And I walked out.
Yeah.
And I remember the guy getting pissed. He's like, "How dare you walk out?" I'm like, "How dare one of your employees tell me?" First of all, you didn't get anyone to help me for that day, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm paying you I'm charging you extra for like my massage at the end of the day.
For the manual labor, yeah, that you're going to have to decompress from.
Exactly. And not only that, I was like, wild. I'm not finishing the job unless you get 2 other people. And then we started arguing. And then I'm like, honestly, I don't like your attitude. I'm not going to continue the job. He's like, all right, give me my deposit back. I'm like, no, you lost it.
Yeah.
I came in, clearly did the job, did part of the job, mm-hmm. right? And that's what that's the worth I take.
And the only reason you didn't finish the job is because they totally just like did not recognize your worth in that situation.
Exactly.
And abused took advantage of you in that situation.
They took advantage for sure, right? But it's also the mindset of like, oh, he's going to get on the site. There's no one there. He's probably going to have to work around it. That's what like the mindset was. It's like, all right, I don't need to hire other people. Like, are you kidding me?
No, that's not even reasonable to say as like,
no, but that's what I'm saying. That's the mindset I could rationalize.
That's crazy.
That's on that day. But you see what I'm trying to get at is like, if they don't know your worth, or not even don't know your worth, if they don't value you as a person, they only see the end result. And that's the other reason why to say no is like, they don't see the process that goes behind the scenes. They only see the final result. And they're like, oh, it's just one photo of a furniture that I had to spend 30 minutes picking up with me and my assistant just to set it down.
Well, regardless of how they view your worth, I think that's bizarre that they expected you to be able to move this heavy furniture. That's not what they hired you for. Right. Like, that's just...
And I specified. And you know what's crazy too? Like, I can go on for the story for like hours because there was so much that was involved with this. But let me just explain one thing too, is I made sure to set a bunch of rules in the beginning first. Is that
you did.
I want to take the pictures at a warehouse. We didn't take the pictures at a warehouse. We took it in a very small, cramped store because, get this, the warehouse doesn't have the furnitures that we want to take pictures of. I'm like, move the furnitures there.
Right.
So from there, that's where I noticed that if the client isn't trying to be reasonable with you, then that's when a moment you should say no. Don't like say, oh, it's going to get better. It never gets better.
Yeah, definitely. Another situation where I feel like I should have said no, maybe. And not that I should have said no, but maybe just in general, been more firm on my view of how I like to get things done and how it's possible for me to get things done. I mean, I feel like the type of client that, will ask so much of you throughout the entire project. Not only just in one aspect, it's like every aspect. I've had jobs where, someone asks me to drive 3+ hours, right? They understand the travel fee, respect the travel fee. That's wonderful. I had one shoot with a client where I drove 3 hours north, got there. The wind was insane. it was like 55-mile-an-hour winds. I've never shot in such a windy environment before. You know, during the shoot, the people that I'm shooting with are just like so annoyed. And I understood, but it was ruining and it was impinging on the product that I was able to produce, because everybody was just, you know, having a hard time, right? So in turn, that one took me a long time to edit, that shoot, because the amount of photos that I took, I mean, I'm not even going to say the amount of photos I took because it's actually absurd, but I wanted to make sure that I got what this client wanted, right? Then being really insistent on getting the photos back in a certain amount of time, when I had clearly explained that, you know, not only was I doing other projects, but that this project required extra time and care and focus on because of the difficulty I had shooting. And, you know, you have those situations where you're like, okay, next time I'm going to do it this way. And I'm not going to just let this slide this way. I'm going to put my foot down here. I'm going to do this and that. And, you know, it obviously comes with experience. The more experience you have, the more you feel, you know, empowered to say, okay, like, I realize my worth better than I did maybe 5 projects ago. I've kind of been around the block a few more times where I can realize and spot something coming from a mile away now and know to say no just like right out the gate, instead of, like you said, just trying to try and figure it out and work it out. Just say no.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's times when it's worth it and times when it's not worth it. And actually, I was thinking about a topic that we can actually talk about next time, which is, with experience, does that make you more of a pessimistic creative or a positive creative? So what I want to say is, like, we'll fine tune it, what it means, but what I'm trying to get at is, like, for example, the experience that you had with that. So you've turned it into a positive where you're going to say, oh, okay, next time I'm going to do this way. For me, for example, like, my one bad experience of a wedding, I'm not doing weddings anymore. That made me negative towards so it's kind of like that.
Right. That's actually a really interesting topic, because, I mean, it also depends on who you are as a person. I think that I try my best to approach everything optimistically and kind of try and learn from every mistake or every bad experience, because all you can do is learn from it at the end of the day, whether it's learning from it saying, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore, or whether it's learning from it saying, okay, I'm going to do things differently maybe next time, but I'm still going to, you know, try again in this field, but just in a different way. Or whether, like you're saying, you just say no altogether to that type of job or whatever it may be.
Absolutely.
So,
and I feel like the power of no is so relieving. I've never felt it more than any by doing this, like, line of work, you know. Mm-hmm. I've always been the yes man, right? Mm-hmm. And it's actually pretty interesting, because if you remember the Jim Carrey movie back in 2008, Yes Man, mm-hmm. Was it 2008? I think it was 2000.
I don't know.
Anyway, 2008, Yes Man. I'll never forget my whole mission after watching that movie. I'm going to be a yes man. Everyone said that's a bad idea, right? And I realized it is a bad idea, because you wear yourself thin. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, like, I feel at that point, like, you're not worth anything if you keep saying yes, yes, yes. You
Absolutely.
know?
People
there are times to
take advantage of you because of that.
There's times to say yes, but, like, honestly, the power of saying no, it's like it's so, like, empowering. And
obviously, you know, you're not going to be able to do that all the time. I think I said to you last week when we were talking about, you know, different things with the podcast, and I was saying to you, man, you maybe need to, like, take a step back for a second here.
Oh yeah, because
I just know I can hear and just get a sense for how burnt out you are.
But then again, there were a couple of things.
There were definitely external factors going into it, but yeah, definitely, and I feel like that's really important to note, is that, yeah, I mean, in my personal experience, I've always been a yes man, and it's been so hard, like, just by nature since I was a kid. Like, it's been so hard for me I always want to try to appeal to people that I'm around, or people that I love or, value. But in my creative field, I feel like that's where I've put down my foot the most.
You know what we should do, right? Rewatch the episode of Work-Life Balance.
Oh my God. That episode actually, yes, it has so many good points that I would totally just like, if I'm feeling like I don't have that work-life balance, okay, let's click on this episode, see what we talked about for our own reflections, because we forget sometimes to take our own advice.
Oh, absolutely.
On certain things, even if we're aware of it. It's hard.
I mean, like I'm pretty like done. Like I've said like what. No, not in that sense. The closeout's always the hardest thing to do. You know that?
Is it?
It's definitely the hardest.
You always do it. I mean, I could take over whenever you like. So.
All right, I'm wearing my self thin, so might as well take it this time.
Okay. Well, I mean, with that, I think that sums up our perspectives and opinions on when to say no to a gig
or when to refuse a gig.
Exactly. I hope that this episode was helpful for you guys. I hope that somebody found relation to it and that, they could take some of this information and use it for the future for their own benefit. Yeah.
And with that, thank you for watching. If you would like to subscribe, the buttons down there with the bell notification to make sure when we do post, you guys are able to see it with the social proofs up here, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Facebook is always up, right?
Always up.
Always up. And with that, the closing remark is that I want you guys to remember the power of saying no is very helpful.
There it is.
That little wink at the end is special,
And, one note I wanted to add before we end the episode. I'm decked out in our friend's clothing brand today.
On eBay.
Please go check them out.
Absolutely.
The link will be in our description in today's episode. And we're going to have them on eventually. Absolutely. I mean, they're one of the first guests that I thought of that I want to get on really badly. But in the meantime, I'll just be repping them in
So
episodes.
If you guys are watching this, hit us up.
Yeah, let's fly on out here.
All right. And with that, thank you and have a great one.
See you next week.